Yes, we love to have you.
I think it will be a very
Honored to have you.
yeah,
Complete.
great for us.
Yeah, I keep a distance, little bit of time now.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Since I have a big conference this weekend,
Yeah.
they will be very unhappy if I don't show up. Better do it.
Me too, I also have a big conference in the afternoon, so.
And actually it's spreading like crazy.
Well, it's
Oh,
fine.
your
Today
COVID cases
morning,
are up.
I was fine. Today morning I just got a little bit of throat and itchy, and then it became fine. And then sneezing and little bit of body ache. That's it. Well, I don't think I went for my walk.
Look, you can share my portable air freshener.
Oh,
I don't have to keep that up. I don't want any noise.
I think I will introduce and we can just start. So, hi everyone, I'm Hitesh Rathi, founder of Aadvik Foods, and we are into camel and goat milk based products supplying across India and abroad. I, on behalf of my team, warmly welcome you all to today's session. I would like to thank Ms. Christina Adams, who on such a short notice obliged to our request to be present here among us. She herself is a mother of an autistic kid and a globally renowned person in the field of autism. She is also the author of Camel Crazy book. We have few copies available here. I would also like to thank Dr. Deepak Gupta and Dr. Ishi to be present here. Dr. Deepak is a well-known child and adolescent psychiatrist in India, and he had been our supporter since our inception and was kind enough to be here. And same I can say for Dr. Ishi. She was very kind to be present here, and she heads the Celiac Society of India. This is the first time we are organizing such an event. Please excuse if there are any inconveniences. We will try to keep this very simple and interactive. In today's session, we will have a few words with Ms. Christina, followed by Dr. Rishi and Dr. Deepak, and then we will kind of leave it open for question and answer. That would be.
yeah. Also, we'll be taking questions online also since we are live. So I would.
Yeah, sure. People who are joining us online, they can post their questions,
Yes.
and we will get it answered. Thank you. Over to you.
Very good. Well, thanks everyone. I am very, very pleased to be in India, one of my most favorite countries in the world to visit. I've been very fortunate to have gotten to know many Indian people over the years. They are important stewards of our camel culture, which I actually have 4 chapters about the wonderful camel keepers of India in my book, Camel Crazy. And so this is a very important place for camels and for health. India has a wonderful amount of biodiversity in its wildlife, its animals, its plants, its culture supports that. So I think one of the important things is to keep this culture of biodiversity and relating to nature alive. So camel milk is one of those things that not only benefits the pastoralists who have camels and produce it, benefits the rest of society. And so this is one of the great things about camel milk and the wisdom that we know that people a long time ago knew that camel milk was very helpful for many disorders and conditions, but nobody had really known it was helpful for autism. And I had the idea back in 2005 that it might help my son with autism. So I flew it in from Bedouins out in the desert in the Palestine area, and I gave it to my son, and he got so much better overnight. It was amazing. So ever since then, I write and lecture about camel milk, and I've just done so many years of research now. It's kind of hard to believe it myself. I will tell our audience here that I had a different career, but motherhood and then the diagnosis of autism is what led me to study camels and camel milk. So parents of children with autism, it will change your life in many, many ways. A lot of those are very difficult, painful ways, but a lot of those offer real growth for wisdom and for you to improve the world around you and yourself. So please do not give up hope. That's what I'd like to tell you. It's a very difficult disorder in many ways. it could do a lot of rough things to the family. But the children are really wonderful. They're much more intelligent than people even know. We should always assume competence on the part of the child. So when we're talking about our children in front of them, let's always remember that even if they don't seem like it, many can understand what we are saying. So we want to presume the competence. There are many, now we know, situations where young adults who are very, very outwardly affected by autism, maybe they can't speak at all, they're self-injurious, they can't control their motor skills, their behavior, they can be geniuses in their mind, and they can know what's going on the whole time, and they can shock you when they finally get the ability to communicate. So we must always honor that our children and our acquaintances who have autism or other neurodiverse conditions deserve the same things as us, the chances of the same things as those who don't. They deserve access to all those things in the world, and they're just like us in many ways. They want the same things. And if they want something a little bit different, that's okay too, as long as we can give them a good quality of life. So today, I think I'm glad to be joined by an eminent dietitian and eminent doctor, and we will learn more about them shortly. As far as myself, I have been doing a lot of studying about autism around the world for many years, but lately I have updated that somewhat. So because I've been giving a lot of presentations in Pakistan remotely, I did not go there yet. Saudi Arabia, I did go over there in December, and some other countries, and now wonderful India. So the things that come together for me are that every country has autism. Most countries, it's underdiagnosed still. We don't recognize all the cases that are out there. India being one of them. A few years ago, they thought it was 1 in 100 had autism spectrum disorder. Now they officially have it at 1 out of 88. But there's a study that came out that said once you go through the people and that are in this group, and then you explain to them what are the symptoms of autism, then many of the Indian people says, yes, we recognize that we have that too. So like certain countries, then there's much more out there, but it is the people that, like the clinicians, the schools, and people like that can recognize the cases of autism. So it's very important to listen to the parent voices, and important to find out if something is kind of different in the child and get it looked at. It's very difficult because there are not a lot of clinicians in India that can diagnose and provide intake services. From what I've heard from many Indian people, the wait is very long to get into a child psychiatrist or a person who could diagnose. But you know, it's longer in most countries. But there's a long way to go here, but I am meeting like amazing people doing incredible things. Also, there's an incredible school in Jaipur called Disha. There's a special education school. They serve children with autism, and they do an amazing job. So there's a lot more going on every year. So as far as Camel Milk and how does it play a role in helping your child with autism. So first of all, not every child, you know, has the same type of autism. There are different subgroups, there are different subtypes. Scientifically, we know of at least 5 to 6 subtypes of autism. There's probably many more to be discovered. It is advisable to do genetic testing if you have the opportunity to get genetic testing on your child. Most of them don't turn up with Fragile X or some of these other syndromes that can kind of have a form of autism, but you can also find clues to where their autism came from if you can do genetic testing. So I urge you, if you have the chance, do that. And then I think it's good to try a lot of things. So the diet, now there are many diets, but you know, typically the diet means gluten-free, casein-free, low sugars, low dyes, organic if you can do it, things like that. So there are different variations of different diets. But I tell people to start by removing all forms of dairy. That means down to the casein level. So that means all butter, milk, cheese, all that kind of stuff, especially A1 cows kind of milk. Now in India, you do have A2 cows in heritage breed. So you do have some cows there that don't have some of the same issues as A1 milk. So that's a good thing. Sorry, I've got to take a little water. Just a moment. But then I say get rid of all the casein, and then you start camel milk. So, so camel milk, You can start at a very small amount, but then you can increase and see how it goes. So it's very important to observe your child when you're doing any changes on the diet or the medical level. So as far as getting it, I'd say it's worth trying. So some children will react very quickly and they will make a positive change right away. Other children take a little bit longer to do this. So stick with it for a while. Sorry, just a minute. I don't know if this my first visit in monsoon is giving me an adjustment. I did walk down the dusty road today. So at any rate, it's going to take some children longer to show benefit. Some children will not show an outward benefit. However, it's still an excellent nutrition source for them. And there definitely is data on that animal milks strengthen the bones of children better than plant-based milks. So I do think it's important to have a supply of animal milk for your growing child. And then also, the plant-based milks can sometimes trigger allergies. So things like rice, soy, nut, those kind of milks, some of these children are highly, highly sensitive. So if you're going to do those plant-based milks, then I recommend you rotate them. That means only use them for a short period of time and then try another one and then try another one. So that's some of the advice that I have, but don't give up on trying all the different types of the diet. And then eventually, if your child just doesn't respond, they don't respond. If you do go to the right practitioner, they can usually test and see if they're showing an allergic response to some kinds of foods. So if you can find that practitioner that does that kind of testing, it's 100% worth it. There are other things that people are doing on the autism front as far as stem cells, as far as fecal transplants, some of these things. Then there's also the hyperbaric oxygen chambers, this and that. So right now, the studies are kind of not really present in some of these things. The fecal transplant, there's a little bit of early studies on those, but I don't think there's anything right now that you should automatically leap to. I think do no harm on your child first of all, okay? If you're gonna do something, make sure that it's not irreversible if you're gonna try it, one of these type of medical interventions. So give them a chance. I'll tell you, just about all autistic children do make progress. Some of them, it takes a very, very long time. Some of them very quickly. So, but there are children that I have seen personally, that I have known since they were 3 or 4 years old, that look like they were never gonna speak. They looked like somebody had hit them in the head with something and they were just dazed and they just couldn't do anything. Some of these children have gone to university and gotten incredible degrees and done very well and live independently and are artists or scientists or mathematicians. It is really amazing what can happen. And then there are children that a lot of things just don't work for, but nonetheless, if they have a device where they can type or speak into it, you can hear what they're thinking and they will communicate to you. So this is one of the main things. No matter what, your child deserves a chance to express their thoughts. So there's different methods that they can communicate. I mean, there's a primitive method where they can point at a letter board and spell out words. Then there are some, portable things that you can, like apps you can put on phones. So if you're in a low-tech kind of area where you don't have an expensive computer, then you can find these kind of things. So don't give up. Make sure that eventually you get your child a voice. And every kind of intervention that you do in the early years may not look like it, but you are reprogramming their brain. You're setting them up for success later. So that's what I have to say at the moment, and I'm happy to take a question when we get to it.
Thank you very much. And, may I ask? I think we are.
I think audience will be able to hear it better.
Okay.
Louder.
So, what kind of a diet would you really tell us to, incorporate? What are the do's and the don'ts, and anything special that you did?
Well, thank you for that question, Doctor. So I guess the number one thing is, to me, is remove all the dairy. And it seems like, oh, dairy is healthy, and which it can be for many people, it's very important. But for our kids, it sounds simple, but it's been said many years in the autism community, the gut-brain connection. The gut, what goes in there, if the gut is not functioning correctly, comes up and affects the brain. That used to sound a little crazy, but it actually is true, and more and more research in the mainstream has borne that out over the last 20 years. So now we know that there's certain things about casein, especially A1, that can kind of create a casomorphin effect, that can kind of make them sort of like they're on a morphine, like on a drug. They're kind of out in the clouds. They can't pay attention. So I say removing all the milk and the casein is the first thing you can do. So I think used to removing gluten was a little bit lesser important, but it was very key for some children. However, now with the advent of glyphosate and a lot of the wheats, even if they're non-GMO, even some of them, even if they're organic, they still have trace amounts of glyphosate. In the United States, a study was just done where something like 80% of people in the study, in their urine contained glyphosate. Glyphosate basically is a weed killer from Roundup. It's a really bad weed killer that's used widely in agriculture. So now I would say, even if maybe your child need to be gluten-free, then maybe we at least still try to look at that Roundup piece, that glyphosate and that piece where you might want to make them gluten-free, or make your own bread, or just get away from whatever has that kind of wheat in it. It's difficult, but I think that's important. Also, a lot of kids' colors, the dyes that are in like processed food and candies and Skittles, these kind of things, little colored things, those are not good for many children. Weirdly, chocolate milk has a bad effect on some kids. So some kids are fine with chocolate. Some kids it really bothers them. And then you can go down to the whole level of, do they need a specific carbohydrate diet? That's called SCD. Do they need certain things like the salicylates? Some kids can't handle that. Some kids need things where they have to be low oxalate. So there's a diet called low oxalate. I mean, the list goes on. There's a lot of these diets. But you will find that if you really watch your child, also now you can easily take video clips before and after. If you make a food change, watch them for a while. Also look at their skin, look at their bottom, see if there's any rashes coming around out where they go to the bathroom. Look at their behavior, look at the circles around the eyes. Many kids have purple or dark circles around their eyes. They're called allergy shiners. That's kind of a symbol that things are not being very well tolerated. The good thing about camel milk is too, it actually helps food intolerance. So my own son, when he would get something terrible and his behavior would be horrible because of it, I would give him camel milk. Within 15 minutes, he's calmed down, he's crying, he's apologizing, saying, I don't know why I did that. Or his stomach would stop hurting. So anyway, for some of these kids, it's almost like an anecdote for that. So I hope that was helpful.
So how about using camel milk products in that case, like cheese from camel milk or yogurt from camel milk?
I think that's fantastic. The whole thing is access. Like used to, you could not make cheese from camel milk because it didn't have an enzyme that would allow it to coagulate. But Nancy Abderrahmane, the founder of Aadvik Camel Dairy in Mauritania, she worked at the French laboratory and made cheese for the first time by adding an enzyme. So now some of the larger dairies are making camel cheese. I wish it was everywhere, because then our children and ourselves can have cheese. I mean, I don't have that issue, but a lot of people have issues with dairy. Camel cheese is great. I've had it in many countries, and it's kind of like a feta. It's kind of soft white cheese. It's very good. And a yogurt. So some people do make their own kefir, which is kind of like that sour drink from the camel milk. Yogurt, great. I mean, I think those products would be a real blessing to people everywhere.
I read it in one of the group also that people are asking whether to give raw milk or kefir to their kids.
The best milk, in my opinion, is the raw milk from the camels that graze on the land and the native shrubs, which you have right here in Rajasthan. In Sadri, LPPS, League of Pastoral Peoples, called Camel Charisma. They have a great dairy there. But then also, not everybody can go out to the village and find these incredible camels out in nature. Like, that's just not possible for a lot of people. So that's why we need our other dairy companies that can have the products that's liquid. If they have a cold chain, they can have powder, which is great. Any product is a good product. Let's put it that way, from camel milk. So, raw, if you can get it and it's from a safe source, this is very important. I think that's great, but that's not always easy to do. So camels do need to be tested for brucellosis, tuberculosis, different disorders. I mean, not disorders, but you've got to make sure they don't have like mastitis, things like that. And then in our Middle Eastern countries, some of those have MERS, which is a coronavirus. Luckily though, that has not really gotten very widespread as far as into humans. A lot of the camels have been exposed to it, they have antibodies, but they don't seem to pass it on a whole lot, which is wonderful. So I would say any camel milk product is a good product, but you know, the closest you can get to the less processed is great.
And what about the taste, camel?
Well, that is a pretty fun thing because I probably have tasted more camel milk from different places than a lot of people. I'm very fortunate that I have had many different products, and so they all have a similarity in that they're kind of thinner than cow milk and kind of light. And you know, some people detect salt. I don't ever really detect that much salt, but I've had really good camel milk usually. I think that may be a function of the dehydration. This is just my guess, but if they get very dehydrated, maybe that concentrates the salt. There is a little trace of it, but you know, it's interesting though, because I've had it from so many different places, and I think the raw, fresh camel milk is great, but again, you have to make sure that's safe. But the pasteurized is also really good, because I've tried them side by side from the same camel at the same farm, and they both taste good. Some of the powders, you know, they need to be stored well. So used to, back in the day, somebody sent me a big package of spray dried powder, and it sat on my shelf and it got really yellow over time, and so that didn't smell or taste so good. But that's because I didn't refrigerate it correctly. You know, back then I didn't know, oh, I should put it in the refrigerator. So I think powder, it's good to keep it in a cool, dry place and sealed. And today's packages are very good. You know, some of these pouches that the companies are using, that's super good. Yeah, those seal them up really well and they protect them. And so just keep it in the cool, dry place or the refrigerator. But it's not hard once you get used to it, but it seems weird at first. You know, so I did mention that in the book. I have all these ways on how to use it, how to store it, where do how do you prepare to use it, how long will it last, all these kind of questions. How much do I give? So there's a whole guide in the book on how to use it for autism, diabetes 1 and 2, gut disorders, skin conditions, all these different things. So you'll get used to it. If you want to try it, don't be afraid. It does make people a little nervous because it seems so unusual. Camel milk, and they're like, what does it taste like? And they're kind of nervous. Their hand is a little bit, and then they try it and they say, oh, it just tastes like milk. So it may have a different flavor. And if the milk does have a stronger flavor, like if it's from a farm where they have recently shifted, you know, their diet, sometimes it can be strong when they first go on the grass. Or if it's from a powder and it has a different flavor, just put it in a smoothie. That's what I do, so no problem.
There is one customer who's asking, is there any guidance on our communication approach with autistic kids? Like, I think people don't understand how should they actually communicate with the kid, because either they are worried or they are tensed or they are stressed. They don't know how to basically, that communication part. So how do we?
That is a great question.
Yeah.
So really, you know, autism is several disorders kind of expressing as one package in a weird way. I'm sure the doctor will have something to say about that. But the language disorder piece is a big piece of it. Even people that have 2 master's degrees and PhDs, if they're on the autism spectrum, most people don't notice it, but I can kind of notice a little bit of difference about their communication. So generally, when they're like early intervention stage, you use kind of short phrases and short words, like if they're first starting like ABA therapy, they generally give commands that are very short, like do this, do that, move this. So it keeps it short, broken down pieces. And some of the children have receptive language disorders. So it's harder for them to follow long strings of words. So if your child is newly diagnosed, I'd say keep it short, 2, 3, 4 word sentences. But another thing is, don't deprive them of language, because they need to be enriched. So read them stories, but don't expect much feedback, but just read it to them. So give them language without a lot of demands coming out in that situation. But then if it's something you want them to do, keep it very short and very specific. Some of them also don't get, you know, metaphor. So if you say, you know, I'm gonna jump in the shower. Like in America, they say, that means I'm gonna go get in the shower. And then if you tell somebody, I'm gonna go jump in the shower, they're gonna think, oh, they're literally going to go jump in the shower. That's a very literal thing some people with autism have. So you'll want to limit that use of metaphor, or just teach it to them. You know, I don't think limit is the right word, just be sure you teach to them what it means.
Sir, you might want to add something.
Yeah, no, I just have a few questions to you directly. You have been a parent, and you are a parent, and you have been doing a lot of research. You have traveled across the globe, and you have tasted so much of camel milk and across different communities. I just want to ask a few things. One, which is the subtype of autism which you think responds most to it? Is it the one who has a lot of gut issues? Is it one who has a lot of aggressive behaviors? Is it who has sleep issues, who have allergic shyness? What, according to your research and thing, which subset of population of autism responds very well? That's one thing. And what age group you think responds very well? Just if you have.
Great questions. So that is something that I have looked at for a long time. So there's a couple of answers. The easy ones that I can be pretty sure they're going to respond are the ones that have those inflammatory allergic responses. I could see if a kid has rashes on his face, he's got the allergy shiners, he's got that kind of vacant kind of look. His lips might be puffy, his nose might be a little puffy, because that's inflammation. You know, and then one of the big key things I say is, when people ask me, I say, did your child have constipation or loose bowels, loose motion as a baby? So that gives me a key. Usually the more severe autistic kids have had the loose bowels as a baby, the more Asperger type of kids has had the constipation. That's just my observation, but it seems to be borne out. But both of those can respond to the milk. So I would say the guys with the obvious gut issues are number one. The people with the facial, you know, rashes, white bumps on the arms or something, based on whatever your skin color is, they may not be white. My sons were white. But those kind of people with the allergic things that don't look typical, those are our number one candidates to try it with. But I will say, I have seen people that I thought they would not respond. I just thought, oh, it's a long shot. They don't have any of these markers. And they have responded really well too. It's kind of shocking. So as far as aggression too, any child with aggression is very severe. It's going to get them kicked out of many places. It's going to deny them many opportunities and can destroy the family. So any kid with aggression, I say try it with, even if you don't know for sure it'll work or not. So I guess that's, oh, one more thing. Dr. Layla Alayadi, she is a scientist in Saudi Arabia. I knew about her work in 2013, and she did a study on autism in camel milk. And so I communicated with her a long time ago about this. And then I just saw her in Saudi Arabia, met her in person, and we lectured together. So I had said, do you think the children with the inflammation and the children with these allergic responses are the ones that respond the best? And she said, yes, that's what we discovered in our study. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, because as it has been seen that camel milk has a lot of anti-inflammatory and it reduces oxidative stress. So that's what I wanted. I was just speculating now. That's what I've seen in some of the children who have worked. One more thing I just want to know is that a lot of times when I started the camel milk, some of the children, they couldn't tolerate.
Yeah.
You started with 25 ml, 10 ml, 15, 25 ml, they couldn't tolerate. And some children, they did very well on 600 ml, like almost like 2 to 3 bottles per day.
Mm-hmm.
So any specific reason, or is there some correlation with cerebral folate, something is there? I just want to know with the research.
Another phenomenal question. As far as it lowered oxidative stress, that is one of the known results according to studies. And so that is important. As far as the children who basically, you know, you can't tell how much they're going to need, or you can't tell what's going on with them. It is a mixed bag. There is a child I know who is a Malaysian child. This child only has a teaspoon of powdered camel milk, and it changed his life. Just incredible. I talked to the father over the years about it, and that's all he needs. And then there are children who, like, you give them some drops, and they have a weird reaction. Now, sometimes though, the parents will report that, but that wasn't really the problem. They did something else that day, or somebody gave them something. So it's worth trying. There are the weird reactions where you could call it an allergic response. There's not many of them, but they're out there. But then there are the ones that can take a whole bunch of it and just suck it down and love it and do well. So it's kind of a mixed bag. Now, as far as that cerebral folate issue, that's an issue that continues to crop up. The only study that I really know that was ever done of it was a few years ago, but then I kind of deconstructed that along with the doctor. And so really the prevalence is less than you would think. And it's my son, this is the funny part. I gave him the Camel Milk. He'd already had a lot of medical testing, a lot of care. He was a very well documented child, but I had never talked about CFD. So I given him the Camel Milk. He'd done great on it. And then years later, when that test came out through the study, the doctor in New York that was at a university, he had a test you could do for cerebral folate issues. I forget what the exact test was called, but I did that test on my son and he showed us mildly reactive. So if I had gotten that before I ever tried Camel Milk, he never would have benefited the way he did.
Yeah.
And the thing with the cerebral folate deficiency is, I think it's still the case that the only way to confirm it is through a spinal tap in your child. Who wants to do a spinal tap? So you don't really do that unless you can, have to do something severe and give them leucovorin and they have these really obvious problems. And there's some of those. But that's why I think it's a little bit of a red herring. I mean, you might find the children with that issue, but it's not the most common. As far as what makes them wig out on any kind of milks or Camel, it's kind of a mystery still. It's just that some of them you can't predict, but some kids are super sensitive. I mean, I knew siblings who, they could only eat one form of chicken. So there was all the antibiotic-free and organic chicken that you would buy in the store in America. They couldn't handle any of it. There was only one brand that didn't make them break out in hives all over their body. They were both on the autism spectrum. That's the only chicken they could have. So something about the feed, the soil, the breed, this and that, it's very complicated. So I don't think we have a good answer on that yet.
And one last question is that, now as you said, now we know that even Aadvik is doing that. There are different formulations are there, from powder to the processing pasteurized to the fresh raw milk. And we know it's not easy to get the raw milk directly because it gets spoiled all the time because of if it's not been properly stored and transported. Now in that case, are there been any study or your experience, as you already mentioned, but that are they all superior? Are they all okay? Or is it just we try with one of them, then if it doesn't work, we try with another one? I'm just asking because a lot of times they don't do well on powder, they do very well on the milk. Sometimes they don't like the taste. So I'm just asking the thought as a mother and as a researcher.
Yes.
Because I've seen changes in paid children, so that's why I'm asking that it will help me in expanding my, my clinical,
Yes.
So.
Well, there are the children that, because I hear from people all over, they write to me a lot on email, and they ask me this, and this, and this. So pretty much I say, look, some of these children are so gut impaired that I can pretty much tell they're going to need the raw Camel Milk. They're going to need that to get the best benefit. Absolutely. But it doesn't mean that they can't benefit from the other forms too. So it's almost like a ladder they can climb. So I say, start with whatever's available to you. If you can get that powder right now sent to you on the internet, then get it and start it. And then you see how it goes. But if you feel that they're responding, but they're not moving as much as they could, then you make the effort to go get that milk from the desert, or in America you can get it shipped to you in a day. So we have it everywhere, and so I think it's like that. So I urge parents, don't give up if you try one form and it doesn't work. Try the most, form that you feel will be the most powerful for your child or yourself. If you're using it for diabetes 1 and 2, if you're doing it for yourself, some of these failure to thrive people with Crohn's and colitis, there are adults out there, they live on Camel Milk and just 3 foods because their gut disorders are so severe. And it's absolutely amazing. There's also now, different forms of Camel products coming out. So, there's different things you can eat and try. I don't know how beneficial a cheese would be, but it probably won't hurt you. It may provide some benefit.
And chocolates?
Chocolates? Oh, well, this is also important because our children that are on the diets, they really need safe treats.
Yeah.
It's a misery as a parent to go to the parties, to go to the celebrations, to go to the school, and everybody's having all their treats and your child can't have it. That is a miserable situation to be in. And I used to use potato milk made out of a powdered potato. That's my son's milk before Camel Milk. So that's all he could have. And so I would make these things and try to get the other kids to eat it at school, and they're like, okay, lady, I'll eat your weird thing because it's your kid's birthday party. But so I say having the camel milk chocolates, taking the camel milk powder or liquid and you baking your own desserts, this is very freeing as a parent. This is one of the things that most people don't think about, but that is an important question. So I can make puddings, I could make cakes, cupcakes, all of these things out of camel milk for my son. And then I have 3 daughters too, my beautiful stepdaughters, and a couple of them would prefer not to have, regular cow milk. So I made lobster mac and cheese with camel milk once, and a dairy-free cheese for one of my daughters, and it tasted great. And so there's just a world of things you can do with that milk that makes it less allergenic for most people. Most people don't have a problem, but the ones that do, you could all have the same food.
Now I have a question
Please.
that whether is sugar sugar suits autistic kids or not? Like sugar, is it a yes or no for autistic kids?
For eating sugar and their
yeah.
behavior?
Yeah.
Okay, for many, it can be a huge problem. For my son, it was a huge problem. For many, it's a huge problem because sugar basically, causes, can create what they call a yeast or a fungal overgrowth in simple terms.
Absolutely.
A little more complicated, but yeah, it creates that. And that can make them just be so weird and wiggy and make them, have poor behavior and make them have like rashes. So getting rid of that fungal overgrowth is often what people do are medications like antifungals. So you've got your, Nizoral, you have your nystatin. These are all pharmaceutical medications and they help. But it would be so much better to have a natural solution. So when my son would eat a piece of bread, because it was made soft white bread, often has a lot of carbohydrates and sugars in it, his behavior would change in 15 minutes. And he could act very drunk and crazy and all that. So then I give him camel milk and he's much calmer. So the thing is, keep the fiber high. If you're going to give a bread or something like that, keep the fiber high, keep the sugars lower. Even in ketchup, some ketchup has higher sugar content. You just gotta watch it. And like beautiful Indian desserts now, oh my gosh, gulab jamun and
Jalebi.
Jalebi, and then the wonderful little dumplings. Yeah.
Rasmalai.
Yes, right, all of that. So those things are very, very sweet, and I've had them and they're delicious. But those are a lot of sweet. Another thing with a lot of the Indian diets are that many people don't eat meat, as we know, so they have to stick with the lentils, those things like that for the protein. And it's hard for them to give up dairy also. I know that's very difficult. So I've seen many of the Indian families adapt by cooking their recipes with olive oil. And I've had some of that food. It's delicious. It's really good. And, but then getting the protein is the tough part if you don't eat meat. So the camel milk has protein. So they'll be consuming the protein. So I think that's a good addition if it works for the child.
Sometimes it happens that kids don't drink the raw milk as it is. So what can we do? Like one way is to make smoothies out of it, but how do we sweeten it?
Right, so I have a recipe in the back of this book which is a lower sugar recipe. You can also use things like agave to keep the sugar content down. That is one of the trade-offs that I make though, because there is sugar-free syrups. Generally I don't like sugar-free if it has artificial in it. But if you can just use a little bit of low sugar syrup to flavor that smoothie, it's worth it. However, fruits are good. If you can use, frozen fruit, camel milk, that generally makes a really nice smoothie that's not overly sweet. However, if you're going to give sugar or fruit, please give a protein with it because that child can get too much fungus, overgrowth, sugar, and all that stuff. So try to pair protein with your sugar if you have to give it.
I'd just like to add to that, just that we also have things like honey and jaggery, which don't behave just like sugar, and they don't give you that the fungal reaction. So they in fact have antifungal properties.
So that can be used to sweeten it.
As you said,
Little, yeah.
They do have they do have sugar of their own kind, which is not harmful, but still we don't want sugar spikes. So it's good. To
Yeah.
do that.
Sugar spikes, and like a very small amount of good quality honey is
Yes.
preferable over an artificial sweetener.
Yeah.
Any-
It actually works like an antifungal.
Yes, honey has the natural properties that are very good. It's when we give too much and the child is not stabilized with protein in their
Yes,
stomach that can
yes.
cause a problem. So, yeah, any more questions?
Yeah, I want to ask, what's the way to start? Do we have to refer a child for a specific test? So what's the procedure?
To start Camel Milk or
Camel Milk.
diet?
Yes,
No, you don't have to. I mean, the best way, and this is a truism on anything, which I've discussed with doctors, the best way to try something in a child is to just try it. I mean, that's your best observation, right?
But maintain a diary.
I'm sorry?
Maintain a diary. I always
Maintain
tell
a
the-
diary.
Yeah, I always
Yeah.
tell the parents, maintain a diary, so everything is black and white and you know what is helping, what is not.
Yes. Also, sometimes what I used to do, when I tell parents, it's kind of mean, but I say, don't tell the school. Do something, but don't tell the school, because you want that unbiased reporting, a blinded experiment, so they don't know to expect anything. Don't tell your relatives. Just try stuff with the child, and then you're gonna hear from other people. How did they do at school? How did they do at the party? How is he, get that feedback blinded. So, but just try it. Now, I do say, people always say, like, do I have to get rid of all the other milk? If you want Camel Milk to work the best, you get rid of all the other milk and all the other casein and all that stuff. So to prepare, you really need to get rid of all the other milk. And then, first of all, then you see, did my child have a problem with the casein in the milk? Because that will become evident after you get rid of it for at least 3 to, the best is 8 weeks, but at least 3 weeks, get rid of all of it. Then see if you see a difference. Then if you put the milk back in for one night, you're gonna see, did my child stay awake all night? Did they have a temper tantrum? Then you'll know, do they have a problem with the milk? Then you add the Camel Milk in. That's what I like to do. But if you have one of those children that is like obsessed with milk, that's a sign that there's a problem. There are some children just love cow milk and they just have to have it all the time. They're addicted to it. That is a problem. So, but if you can't get rid of it all, then you start fading it in. So take their sippy cup that's got regular milk in it. You pour some camel milk in that, you start to decrease the cow. Every day you increase the camel, you decrease the cow, slowly, slowly, so they start to accept it. Then you get rid of all of it and they will never notice maybe. That's what we hope.
Do we have any study which directly indicate the positive impact of camel milk on a specific area like language, hyperactivity, sensory issues, or any other issues related to the autism?
Well, we do have more now than we've ever had. The Dr. Layla's study, the clinical trial in Saudi, was still the best because they did use the CARS and all like the rating scales of autism to assess the children after, I think it was 2 weeks. Then they also did, the blood work and all that on the children. So that's still the best one that we have. However, there have been many more studies out there, and some of these smaller camel places have run some studies. So there's a review, what they call a review of the literature, where they go through all the studies and they pick out all the conclusions. So the review of the literatures, now there's several, and it states camel milk is good for severe milk allergies, for autism in children, for X, Y, and Z. So that's what the literature is concluding now. So we do have that. And then my own case report is called, only I'm not a doctor, so they call it patient report. I wrote that about my son in 2013, and it was a description of all his background, all the medications and therapies he had, and then how we tried camel milk. So that is now cited about 20 times. It's still inspiring, maybe more now than it used to, inspiring science to look at this and cite it, and like, this is helping a lot. This was right, and we're looking at that and showing that it was valid. So I think scientifically now we're at a good point. Plus we have the people out here doing it. Like if we wait for, this is autism. If you wait for medical science, my son would be locked up in an institution right now, not have his driver's license, not be making movies, not be doing stuff with his friends that he does, not be driving a boat. He would be in an institution. That's where he would be. You can't, if we wait for them, they're not gonna do it. Parents are the one that have driven this. And then we're lucky to have a few amazing doctors that come along with us. It's very rare. So we're fortunate to have 2 clinicians in this room that participate with us. You gotta lead it. So you know, the science is moving, it's still not enough, we need more clinical trials, but it's too expensive because people generally don't do science unless there's an economic benefit to the people that do the science out of it. So we need more, but we don't need it right now to know that it's positive because we have enough.
There is one customer who's asking, the Good Doctor web series has shown it similar to the reality. So I'm sure you would have heard of. The
Yeah, I've
Good
heard of
Doctor.
that.
Even I watched it myself and I loved it because I wanted to understand this community more, learn more about autism. So whatever they have shown in the series, is it like closer to the reality? Is what he's asking.
Well, I will confess, I didn't watch that series because I live autism research and autism this and that for so long that when I relax, I don't really want to watch autism stuff. So I didn't watch it. But I have heard that a lot of people say there's realistic things about it. One of the criticisms of a show like that is that most people with autism will never be able to have a job like that. They're not going to be capable enough because they don't get enough help to function that well. So if you can get the vast majority of people diagnosed with autism enough support, by that I mean biomedical, education, social, aids, they need an aid. Like, there's a person that is on the autism spectrum. He is a Nobel Prize winner for economics. He works at a college. He has people that help him. So if a Nobel Prize winner has somebody that helps him, there's no shame in that. That's how he got to where he is, and he has a helper. That's awesome, you know. So, you know, I think everybody with autism or disabilities deserves support to get to where they can get, and it's better for everyone that way. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Dr. Deepak
Yeah, please.
Gupta.
No, yeah.
I have 2 questions. My son is around 18 years old now, and he's taking Camel Milk from the last 7 or 8 years. And every day he used to take a 200 ml of water. Earlier in the past, when I tried to increase the quantity, I found some rashes on his face. And when I reduced it, it was okay then. This is the first thing. Is there any correlation between increasing the quantity and this getting some issues? The first thing. The second thing is, apart from Camel Milk, he is taking. I think this mic. Apart from Camel Milk, I think it's perfectly fine. Apart from Camel Milk, he is taking the cow milk also, the pasteurized cow milk. So, is it good if you take both the things in terms of with sugar or in terms of coffee? He takes it with the cow milk. So, is it possible? Is it good if you take both the milk together?
Well, let's do a little diagnostic forensic on this. When you first gave him the camel milk, he benefited?
Why not?
Okay, was he on cow milk then, or was he off?
When?
Back when he started it, was he on cow milk or was he off?
No, he was on camel milk.
No, I mean, when you gave the camel,
Yes.
was he still drinking cow milk?
Yes.
So all this time, he's still been drinking
Always.
cow milk?
Always.
Okay, so I would say, get rid of all the cow milk now, and
Okay.
let's see where he is. Because if it benefited him, and he was still on cow milk, get rid of that, and he might do even better.
Okay.
And then I will answer your other question about,
Increase
you
the
give
quantity.
too much.
Yes.
Some of the children, yes, there is such a thing as too much. My own child, he did great on 4 ounces a day, but when I doubled it, he had weird tics and jerks and grimaces, and it kind of was like it started a tic disorder. And it went away as soon as I lowered the dose. So yeah, it's a very powerful, milk if you've got the right kind or works for your child. So yeah, it can be a little bit much, so that's why you have to be careful and find that sweet spot.
In the last how many days now? Like if I started by today, to get away this cow milk, how many days do we have to keep it to see the things will improve? How many days will it take?
Well, he's 18 years old. He's
Yes.
been on cow milk his whole life,
Yes.
and he's diagnosed with autism.
Yes.
Okay, so I would want to do a real, at least with him, I would love to see at least, if I'm honest with you, at least 8 to 12 weeks. None. Then, if you want to do what they call a challenge test, you give him an amount again, and you see if it changes him or not. Okay? But give him the camel milk the whole time though. Let that camel milk work without any cow, any casein, that means butter. Some people think ghee is okay, but I don't know. We'll let you talk about that, but I personally would just stay away from all of it, any kind of casein product. But you can get now plant-based. You can get even cheese is plant-based. He might cause a problem, he might be upset, but how is he, it depends. Will he be able to handle if he, will he eat a cheese that's not made out of cow milk or paneer or anything like that?
He's fond of it, actually, paneer.
He what?
He's fond of paneer.
Yes,
Cottage
right,
cheese.
so if you take it away from him, will he eat another form?
Okay.
Okay, so, yeah, you gotta get rid of paneer, all of that stuff. But you know, now there's more plant-based things that you can try to substitute. It'll be tough, but try it.
We have people who are making alternatives, even paneer.
You might do much better, I'm
Yogurt.
hoping.
Let's see.
I can share the numbers.
Sure.
Wonderful.
So I had a comment to make for even Hitesh and all of you, that the perception of camel milk and association with autism, it can be very mistakenly used as an alternative rather than a therapeutic agent. So I think we are talking about the therapy and how it works as a medicine and how it benefits, rather than just being an alternative milk. So in all your communication, I think this is something which must come out. That, we talk about a gluten-free, casein-free diet, and that therefore is excluding all dairy and all animal milks. So therefore maybe camel milk is tolerated. So being something which is tolerated versus a therapeutic benefit does not come out in this. So all the communication must use this aspect as a medical benefit.
And another great thing to add on to your really worthy comment, thank you. Camels are much more environmentally friendly than cows. Depending, I mean, here you guys let your cows have more freedom than we do in other countries, so it's better. But generally, they take far less water, they have far less emissions putting out, and it's really healthy to have the camel milk for the earth. And then, second of all, it helps the people that have the camels, that's important. Third of all, a lot of people say, oh, camels, we don't want to treat another species badly and take milk from them. Oh, don't be mean and milk them. No. Generally, camels, they keep the babies with the mothers, sometimes up to the whole year, and because they stimulate the milk and the nursing. And camels are a domestic animal. They're not exotic, even though they're classified as such in the United States. They're a long-term historic domestic animal. And the relationship between camels and their caregivers is very tight. And if a camel is not happy, it will not give the milk. So it protects itself. So it is an ethical milk too. I think that's an important point in a climate-friendly milk.
So have the components in the milk, I mean, we say they have antimicrobial or benefits. What are the real therapeutic agents which have been used in
The camel milk?
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of different ones. Mechanism of action, so to speak, is yet to be determined. However, a lot of people in the science field have ideas about that. So there's enzymes, and there's different kinds, which have complicated names, but some of them are found in like human breast milk, some of them are found in tears, all the natural functions. But then one of the key that's very important is lactoferrin. So lactoferrin has a lot of these antiviral, antibacterial.
Stable to meat, to pasteurizing?
Well, that, right now it's showing that the loss is less than maybe people previously thought. As far as spray dried too, first we were thinking maybe spray dried wasn't as effective, but now it looks like maybe it does have some good benefits. So, like I said, there's no such thing as a bad camel milk, like they all have their place. But then it does have amazing, like it can attack pathogens. It's like a fancy name for germ.
Yes.
So it does have that ability to kind of explode the cell walls of certain pathogens. Also, it has these incredible antibodies, and they are shaped so that they can actually like pierce the cells of pathogens. And camels are being used now for even to develop therapies for snake bite, deficiencies, even COVID vaccines, all these different things, camelids as well. So it's like they're using some other animals that are related to camels for this stuff as well. So there's a lot, but They all have antibacterial, antiviral properties, and then it has GABA, which may be good for the brain because it might, slow down some of the excitements that shouldn't be excited nerve endings in the brain, because GABA could be important for like the calming effect. Now, camel milk is universally described as having a calming effect by the heritage cultures that have used it. And I've seen it in the kids too, because many people have stopped aggression in their kids. You have kids that are so aggressive, they'll slam their heads in the walls or the cabinets, give them camel milk and it stops. So I have a long science presentation about this. I have a short science presentation about it, but I have many examples of this. And so more work to be done, but much information is already out there.
This question I'm going to ask is not related directly to camel milk, but the vaccination and autism and autistic kids. What has been your strategy for kids like this? COVID vaccine.
Well, I think anything with the COVID vaccine is still evolving, so, I'm vaccinated and my son's vaccinated. I didn't see any negative effects,
You
so,
didn't.
no. But, people have to, depending on the country they are, they have to make that decision, so I'm sure the doctor can talk
Did
about
you
that.
notice any changes?
I've not. A lot of parents have asked me, so I said, please go ahead with it because now. And initially it was 18 plus, which was allowed. So we gave to a lot of kids, a lot of young people, and they could tolerate very well. Then it became 12 plus, and we tried. In India, it came up like that, and we tried for a lot of young people, with 12 plus. And now we have a younger age group. So in that way, gradually, we have tried and we have not seen any sort of an impact. But yes, I know what you are trying to ask, but there any children who have a vaccine injury, which is again a very controversial topic to talk about, but some of the parents who have seen vaccine injury, they're very reluctant, they have not given it. Some of the doctors themselves, some physicians, they have seen their own kids gone through vaccine injury, they have not given, and they're okay with it. Unless you have to travel, like if you have to really travel and you have to follow those regulations, you can't avoid. If you're traveling, in any part of the country where you need to cross the airport and other things, you can't do it. So,
Maybe there's something to be said about exceptions and, for vaccination.
but with COVID, we have not seen any regression happening. Up till now, till the vaccine came in January 2021 to India, in last 1.5 years, I have not heard even a single case of regression happening on COVID vaccine, whether it's a COVID, whether it's a Covaxin, or whether it's any other ones. I have not seen anything happening. Can I ask you one last question?
Yes,
How long?
to take milk.
Is it like something it becomes a lifestyle? Or is
Oh,
something,
right.
or is it something you give it a few years and you see improvement and then you try to fade it off? Because a lot of parents in community says, how long? How shall? It's so difficult. We are not taking it, only the child is taking it, it's so difficult. And the whole family can't afford it, it's so expensive, we can't change the culture of the whole, and we have a lot of nuclear joint family system here, different systems. So how long and who all?
Right, so that's one of the issues that I address in the back of the book as a user's guide, because everybody wants to know, how long do I have to give this? So there are some kids, you give them a course of it, it's like, of the camel milk, it's like it kind of cleans up some of their issues, and then they kind of stabilize and they don't need it. Usually though, those are the kids that are borderline autistic. They really have just had some setbacks, but they don't need a whole lot in order to get to that more typical presentation. But then there are children who need to have it all the time, or they regress. I know people that are adults they're young adults now, and they're still having the camel milk all the time. Now the funny thing is, my own son, he had it for years and years and years. Then when he grew up, he's going to school, he doesn't keep it in his refrigerator, and I'm always like trying to run it and force it into him. Hey, drink this. He doesn't have time for that, but he doesn't get affected as badly anymore by the cheese and the milk. I feel like it helped heal that for so many years. However, he did have a big milkshake a couple years ago. And then the next morning, which I did not want to see him, and this is a real cow milkshake. I never see him drink something like that. I said, I'm gonna get a milkshake. He got one. The next morning he was in a horrible mood and his face looked really red. And I was just like, oh, you know what? I said, that milkshake, it was a sugar and dairy bomb, and it got you. And he goes, You're right. He even made him feel hot. So he never did that again. So he can eat pizza with some cheese on it, but he doesn't really drink milk or milkshakes. So I think it did have that healing effect, but he still has the weakness, but not much. So most people, they always say how expensive camel milk it is. We know this. This is one of the things where I say, if we can get companies like that are gonna fund science or universities to give grants to either the camel milk companies or the families where they can get camel milk for free if it's too difficult for them, or reduced price, that's what we need to do. The long tradition of camel cultures is that the milk often was never sold, it was given away for free to the sick. Of course, that was when it was more common, and you didn't have to have expensive land to farm your camels and regulations and stuff. And they don't give a ton of milk, so this is also why it's expensive. And they're pregnant for a long time, 13 months, and they only have one baby. So it's a precious commodity. But this is an issue, the cost for everybody. So I would just say, think of it this way. It's like liquid medicine for many of the people. It solves so many problems for many of the people. You can pay for your antifungals, you can pay for some of the drugs to stop the aggression, or you can try the camel milk. And if it works for you, it's a natural substance, it's worth the money. I would say ask your relatives for the money to help. Don't give money to the child's college fund. They're not going to college if they don't get any better. They're not going to get married if they don't get any better. Don't save it for that. Grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, give money now for me to treat my child biomedically. This is much more important than any future that they may not even have.
May I have one last question, please? When we're using term like we can treat autism, so is it any chance or any probability to treat autism with camel milk?
You mean for everybody or for?
No, for autism specifically.
Yeah, that's one of the main drivers of the whole market. That's how it's pretty much started to kick off around the world. It was when I published an article about my son in a magazine in 2012, and it just kicked off so many people around the world to have interest, and then that population grew and it grew and it grew. So it's still one of the main drivers of selling camel milk. So people are using it to help their own children. As far as medically, it will cost maybe so many millions of dollars to develop a drug based on camel milk that I don't think a company is going to do that. If they do, more power to them. But right now, we just have the milk. So it's a huge driver of the market. That's what it's largely being used for. Plus tuberculosis, other things, diabetes, things like that. But autism is in action with camel milk.
There are two online.
I think the online questions, we are short of time,
Yeah.
so we will wrap it up.
I'll say one more thing in closing. First of all, I never say that camel milk is a cure for autism. I don't use the word cure for autism, so please let's not attribute that to me. However, it is a potentially useful tool, and it's a very healthy food for you and your family. Second of all, I would just say, don't give up, and you have to meet your child where they are. If they can't do a certain thing, that's okay. Find where they are and how you can meet them and how you can help them. Take care of yourself also, parents and families, okay? Namaste.
Thank you very much.
So we will wrap up this session. It was very informative. Thank you very much, Christina, Dr. Deepak, and Dr. Ishi, and all the guests who have joined us. Before concluding, I would just like to present you guys with something new which we have introduced.
Oh, yeah.
These are goat milk chocolates, not related to this event, but
Goat milk. Oh, that's exciting. Well, that's a great product. Goats are a wonderful pastoral product and wonderful milk, so I'm very excited. Congratulations on your product.
Thank you.
And let me tell you, I've already tasted that. He came a week back when we were planning about this event, and I've tasted, and the cocoa with hazelnuts, good.
Wow. Well, fantastic. This is a wonderful moment for me. And thank you to Aadvik Foods. Thank you to esteemed colleagues that I've had the pleasure of meeting today. And thank you for this beautiful, beautiful gift. And thank you all for either watching or actually coming today. That means a lot to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will have high tea just outside.
Very
Tea.
nice.
I can just say one thing, when My biomedical journey started in 2007, almost 15 years back, with a lady called Manisha Ladd. She is still a parent, and her son is almost now 21. Akhil, and she stays in New Jersey. And so whenever I meet parents like Manisha or like Christina, it always, being a child psychiatrist, it always encourages me to see and explore more and more, because autism is like an ocean. It's a very complex, multifactorial, heterogeneous disorder, and we still a lot of mysteries. And Camel Milk is one of the modalities. So it is like, I really get motivated. And thank you very much for inspiring down an inspiring journey with Johanna. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much for all the experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I guess we do it. If anybody wants a book, I think we can do a signing.
Yeah,
Is that right?
if anybody would like to have the books, she can sign the copies.
Yeah. I'll sign for you. Oh, great. Thank you. I'll just-
No, we go on.
Thank you.
I don't get that.
Okay. Rinky, did you get any photos of our nice audience? Did you get photos of our nice audience?